taking up. I'm going to ask my panel to come up real quick. We're going to start with questions and answers. There's actually 5 people on this, but we're going to ask, we added a 6th chair today. Sandy Jens, who we just heard from. We got Rosemary Jordan, who's here, Vice President of Elder Care Alliance. Dr. Elisa Frick, postdoctoral fellow from Cal Berkeley. We got Kevin, who's our business innovation person from Lighthouse AI. We got Shelly, who's the CMO and partner for Clairvoyant Networks. And then we also have a visitor from Italy, I think is what it is, right? Lei Sun, who is last year PhD student at the Social Informatics Research Group at the University of Trento. I didn't try to pronounce your last name. So before we start, we're going to get the questions and answers. We're going to give a few minutes to each person to have a little bit of conversation and tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into the Q&A. All right? So first up, I think is Shelly. Sorry.
I'm just going to go after other people. Okay, so I think I'm about the only non-PhD on this panel, so I'm like delighted to be up here, and I have no idea how I snuck in. My name is Shelly Simons. I'm a partner, and unfortunately I'm the marketing person at Clairvoyant Networks. My partner and the CEO and co-founder of the company is a gentleman by the name of Steve Popovich. And Steve and I met 33 years ago when we were working at a connectivity company, and we went our separate ways. He and his engineers founded and sold 3 technology companies that does IoT connectivity and communications. I went into SaaS, and about a year ago, our first CEO brought us back together saying this elder care space is huge, there's massive problems everywhere, and you guys need to go out and solve it. So the problem that we saw was that there is a whole lot of technology at the point of care, but it is also very disconnected and very uncoordinated technology. So you have a lot of one-off point solutions, and this is not adding a huge amount of value to elders and people who are trying to accomplish staying in their home longer with less financial resources, with children, conditions coming, all sorts of things. So our concept is similar to Honors in that you've got to have that platform at the point of care, and you have to have the devices that all work and interoperate together. So what we are building is a SaaS platform with the necessary IoT, both wearable and installable and sensors, and there's been some amazing developments in the sensor side of the business. And we would love to work with any other company here in order to make that happen, including Honor, and I know you're going to talk about robots, and I'm really thankful I got ahead of you on the robots because those are always fun. Okay, so that is the problem that we're trying to solve, and we just started shipping. Part of what's amusing to me is that there's been a whole lot of, if you're familiar with the storming, forming, norming paradigm, there's a lot of storming in this market, and there is a video out there that kind of encapsulates, I'm sure you guys have seen it, which is the uninvited guest video, and I think it's on the Text Enhanced Life website. If you guys have a chance to go see it, that really encapsulates the problem. It's all point solution products, etc. So why is this so important right now that we deal with this? Well, Lori Orloff talked about the financial crisis. I mean, gone are the days of, my parents' retirement where they had a fully paid off house, no mortgage. Most seniors are retiring with mortgages now. They had pensions, they had retirement savings, they could cover the gap with Medicare and Social Security, and they also had a lot of family and professional caregivers and assisted living that they could tap into. Okay, that's not the retirement us boomers are facing. So the products that we are delivering, they're called TheoraCare. And Theora is an old Greek girl's name for she watches or she knows. And what we are doing is putting technology, very unobtrusive, into a home on a wearable, because people are active, they're in the home, they're outside of the home, and you've got to be able to monitor and be able to alert people when things happen both inside and outside of the home. And underneath all that is what the exciting stuff, which when I was listening to Sandy, I was like, oh yeah, that's great, because I come from Oracle, I know what it's like, yeah, let's get all that data, let's do all the analytics, let's do the AI, let's do the machine learning. And let's only expose to the family or the professional caregiver what is the exception management. We don't need to know that everything is okay with mom. We don't need to know, for example, that the caregiver showed up on time per se. You just need to kind of know, okay, what happened and what do I need to do about it? So I would then have situational awareness at the point of care. And that will help me understand how, when, and where my care recipient, my loved one, would need some help. If everything's okay, everything is okay. And then home care person can jump in, the care pro can jump in, the family caregiver can jump in, and that's how the concept works. So we started to deliver these products, and I'm very excited because we're also entering into a research study funded by the state of Texas with 7 of the top universities in Texas. I'm also a little scared about this because it's like, how do you get 7 universities, maybe you can help me understand this, and all these researchers to understand what the methodology and the protocol is. But we're going to be measuring the efficacy on both the care recipient and also the family caregiver of what does situational awareness bring to them. What financial savings, what emotional savings, what mental savings, what time savings. And I was kind of tickled with some of the millennials that were here in the audience today because, we have the stereotype of the caregiver being the adult daughter or the adult spouse or anything like that, but 25% of caregivers are now 25 to 40. And, it's an equal opportunity employer. And that means that not only are the people they're caring for headed into retirement, not in great financial shape, they're going to be in even worse financial shape because there's a hidden cost. They take time off. They go part-time. They don't even have work. You lose out on 401k, Social Security, retirement savings. It becomes a snowball effect. So that's the net of it. Sorry if I went on too long, but we are really excited about trying to bring together, the same way Honor has done on the back-end systems, technology and platforms at the point of care, so that the family caregiver, the professional caregiver, even assisted living, senior living, et cetera, and hospitals and skilled nursing can actually provide that care and that peace of mind that people need to know. And for me, selfishly speaking, because I'm not that far off, I want to go into my retirement knowing that I can live my best normal life with whatever conditions I have. I can be safe in my home. I can be free to move about the country or go to Italy next week like I am, haha. And know that, my professional caregiver, my family, my friends, everybody will know how, when, and where I might need some assistance. And that will give me that situational awareness safety net that is going to be necessary for so many elders and all the upcoming generations. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to anyone and everyone about how do we move from the storming into the forming and into the norming so that we can attack this problem that's hitting us right in the face, dire problem.
So Shelley, you need to talk to Lisa first.
I think I do.
Okay. All right, Kevin.
Good evening. So my name is Kevin. I'm from Lighthouse AI. This is the Lighthouse camera. This has been on sale since February. Unlike a lot of the technologies that you're going to hear about tonight, we actually didn't start out focusing on the seniors aging in place. We actually just built this as a way to get accessible intelligence for any space. This is designed for the home. But when we went on sale, it turns out that a lot of folks who were aging in place and their families were buying these cameras and putting it in their homes. So it's now the second largest segment of our user base. And I'll give you a quick rundown on the technology and some of the key things, and then I'll pass the mic over. So there's 3 pieces to our technology platform. This is the camera itself. It's a little bit different than other cameras in that it has a regular high-def color camera as well as a 3D sensor. That gives us the ability to see any space the same way that humans do. We have an AI cloud platform. That AI cloud platform takes what this camera sees and understands it the same way that you and I do. So we can tell the difference between a child and an adult, a cat and a dog, a door opening, a window opening. We can also recognize things like waving and jumping and running. And then the last thing we have is a mobile app. The mobile app in the senior care space is primarily used by the adult children or the caregivers. And the mobile app has a unique feature in that we use, just like Alexa and Siri, we use natural language processing. So you just have a conversation with the app. You just can ask what happened today. You can ask what time did the caregiver show up. Any of those kinds of things. Anything that you could ask a person who's in the home, you could ask our system. You could also ask it to set alerts for things that are going to happen in the future. So You can set activity alerts like tell me when the dog walker shows up, or you could say inactivity alerts like tell me if you don't see my mom by 8 a.m. In the kitchen. So there's a lot of really interesting technology there, but that's kind of our basic platform. I want to just share a little bit about two things. One is about privacy. So a lot of folks have kind of a knee-jerk reaction of like, oh my gosh, there's a camera in my house. We've talked with a lot of people who have the cameras in their homes, particularly seniors, and the vast majority of them will say one thing, which is, after I installed it, I completely forgot it was there. And that's actually a really good thing. It's a passive monitoring system. It gives you intelligence for what's going on in the home. We also build in privacy right from the get-go, so you can turn this off. Unlike we were talking about earlier, Alexa, you can't turn Alexa off. You can turn this off. And you also have bank-rated security around the way we store the video clips and who gets permission to see them. The last thing I'll just share with you is just kind of a vision for how this might work in the home as we start to look at like interoperability, what you can integrate with, those kinds of things. So imagine a lighthouse at the front door and a lighthouse inside the house. At the front door, you could actually have the camera, which has AI and facial and person recognition, authenticate who the guest was who was approaching the front door. If it's a known caregiver or a family member, it could immediately send a message to the smart lock to unlock the door. It would also then track that coming and going. It could do UE for caregivers, so electronic verification of the visit. It could also, for those folks with memory issues, it could trigger a personalized announcement saying that this is Mary and she's here, she's your caregiver, here's what she's going to do today, here's how long she's going to be there. There's a whole bunch of personalization that you can run off of that. Inside the home, you could have some very good evaluations by both the family and the caregiver service provider about the quality of the interactions between the senior care recipient and the senior caregiver. You can also do a whole bunch of things that give you a lot more intelligence about whether it's ADLs or about predictive patterns. So things like noticing when there are stumbles and when people are reaching out for balance and things like that. So if you think about, if you were there 24/7 being able to watch what's going on in a room, our system allows you to gather all that intelligence, makes it accessible, and we look forward to doing more in developing around this specific use case.
I don't have slides for everybody else, so take your turn.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Jordan. I'm with Elder Care Alliance, and for 110 years we've been in the senior living business. But at about 2 years ago, we shifted and we purchased an apartment building that is unlicensed. And now we're about to launch a new division which has really nothing to do with bricks and mortar, but to do with helping to support older adults that are living in the community. One of the things that we care about, because we're a not-for-profit, is purpose, vocation, social engagement, and combating ageism and social isolation. Some of the things that we've talked a little bit about this evening. And that's why we stood up a research function about a year and a half ago. So underneath my team, which is strategy, business development, and innovation, we have an experiential researcher in residence. So we do have a PhD who works for me, who in partnership with typically one or more other entities, we're conducting original research. And we're doing that research this year on a whole variety of different topics, including autonomous mobility. We're really curious about the opportunities for autonomous shuttles for older adults. But the study that we just recently completed was on a social robot. It's the Jibo robot, and we studied it at an assisted living building in Oakland. It was a 6-week study that literally just completed 2 weeks ago, so I can't provide you with the results tonight, but if you stop by the front desk, you probably picked up a flyer for the event that we're having on October 16th. We'll be hosting at the Aging 2.0 chapter in Alameda an entire evening to go through the results of our study. But a couple things that I wanted to feature for you about it, sort of a little sneak preview, is that we worked really hard on the design of this study, and I would recommend for anybody who is either a researcher principally or hoping to engage with research or consuming it in some way, that we really worked on mixed methods. So a lot of our approach was to engage older adults and creative practice around their experience with the social robot. So we had them draw, and with a variety of different materials, what their identification and feelings about social robots were at the beginning of the study, and then we encouraged them to do the same later in the process. So we had a combination of observation, data collection from the device itself, as well as this creative practice. We're not the first people to do this research, but we stand on the shoulders of other people who have done it before. And one of the things that I think has been touched on tonight is that, contrary to maybe some mythology that older adults are fearful and rejecting of technology, we're actually finding, we were able to confirm through this research, that there is a tremendous interest and enthusiasm for how technology can support older adults to live with more purpose and to actually feel more empowered. So that's something that we're really excited about, that we were able to develop through this, or to uncover through this research. So I hope that if you're interested in the topic of social robots, how we conducted the study and some of the things that we found, that you'll come and see us in Alameda on October 16th.
So hello everyone, my name is Alisa and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the UC Berkeley and International Computer Science Institute. And it's really fascinating to be on this panel and to explain why. I'll tell a very little story that happened literally last week. So we were presenting that poster that you can see over there, and I also invite you to have a look at it during the break or after the panel session. We were presenting this poster at the Aging Summit at the University of UC Berkeley, Aging and Technology Innovation Summit. And there were a lot of people who were manufacturers of all these fascinating devices for older adults. And our study was about privacy and security of those devices. And we were very interested to talking to these people and to see how do they address this issue and what do they think about that. And you know, it's like a unique opportunity to actually talk to the front line of some sort. And then it was very funny because then one of the people, the CEO of one of the startups that have some virtual reality technology for older adults, came to introduce his colleague and said, "Oh, have a look here. So I know these guys, they are on the other side. They're like our enemies. They're doing research on privacy and security." And I literally lost my speech because that was a very interesting way to put it. And I tried to explain to him that we are actually on the same side. We're not on two different sides, and we have to be friends. And it's not only beneficial for us because we are this weird activists or whatever it is. It actually has a lot of sense for their product and for their market and for their consumers. And then I showed him and explained him some of the results that we found from our study. So basically, the reasoning behind our study was that the market of consumer technology for older adults is growing really fast, and many of you are familiar probably with the statistics of the number of people of age 60, 65, 70 and older are growing every year, while the number of people who can be actively engaged in the market and provide care going down. And that's what motivates all of us to work in that space and to advance technology so that we can provide a good level of care even if we don't have enough workers on the market, on labor market. So that was interesting, and researchers are sort of abnormal people. Usually people try to avoid problems, and researchers are those weird creatures that are looking for problems. And they call them research questions. And they especially interested in the questions that market is not going to solve by itself. So for instance, there is the issue of how to address different care issues, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in this room or outside of this room are doing a great job in developing artificial intelligence, all different, machine learning, all those different techniques to address that. And privacy and security always comes as a secondary or even tertiary point of this. And I totally understand that, also because not all of the products are coming from the big players. There are a lot of startups, which means that they have 2 to 10 people on their team. And they carry many roles, so they wear many hats, and they're marketing leaders as well as the technologists, as well as people who go and talk to investors and also writing business plans. So they're doing all of that, and I can understand why they cannot focus on something that is as niche and as specific as privacy and security. So what we did, we applied for a grant from our university, and we got it. So we kind of financially independent, and we don't have to ask money from anyone who has probably interests different from ours, so we can conduct independent research. And we decided to go and talk to people. So decided to go and talk to older adults because their opinions are underrepresented in privacy and security research as well. Not only on the market and like the market of the products, but their voice is also underrepresented in privacy and security. I did my PhD in privacy, not focusing on older adults, just in general privacy online. And I know that it's usually not a lot of literature on that. So what we did, we partnered with a lot of senior centers or care facilities in Bay Area. Well, unfortunately in Bay Area, I'm quite shameful to say that it's only in Bay Area because I know that it's a very specific population, and I would actually really like to expand it to not only to the US, across the US, but also outside the US, and we're working on that now. So we went to talk to them. We invited them for the interviews, and we had a pretty great sample for an interview study. We had 47 people to talk to, and their age was everywhere between 65 and 95. Their health conditions were everywhere from excellent to very poor. They were both men and women. We tried as much as we can to involve men on that. I don't know why they're like just less active and less willing to participate in this sort of research, but we did. Even in terms of sexual orientation, we had a big diversity, and like across all the parameters. That was very interesting, and that was very insightful. So I really invite everyone who is working in that space to do more and more user studies and talk to people, because they provide so much insight that you would never think about. And we just did it to test the waters and to see whether we could do anything there, what are the emerging problems. And we didn't want to start from privacy and security, so we first talked to them about their lives. And we've heard a lot. And we talked about what kind of issues do they have, and we heard even more. And then we talked, how do they see technology fitting in this picture of everyday life that they live every day. And we learned, again, a lot there. So we learned what is their opinion towards different sorts of technologies, how do they perceive it, would they see themselves using it, if not, why they wouldn't use it, whether they tried it, and what was the success story, what was the failure story. And we've heard a lot of interesting failure stories too, which point towards the usability issues that a lot of devices have. So it informed us on many concerns that they have towards technology. And before we even asked any questions about privacy and security in that, a lot of people brought up the issue of that. And they told their stories, and they talked about their concerns in general. Also, that happened after Facebook outcry, Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. That was very interesting because they probably don't even use Facebook. It really doesn't matter. They've heard of that story, and that really resonates with them, and it relates to them, even they're not users of that particular technology. And that affects how they perceive other technologies, because they don't know the names, they don't know all the brands, they call it they. So they're like afraid of the thing as, you know, this, like something that is evil genius that is gonna know everything about me. So that's why it applies to every technology. Even if you think, no, it's not about me, we're great. If people have not really tried it yet, or they are not sure, they're not aware, they haven't heard much about it yet, they're going to apply the heuristic that they've heard from other areas. And we were talking about wall sensors, fall detectors, robots, all different sort of, you know, this new and novel kind of tech even for us. And even when they didn't have an opinion or interaction, like a precise opinion on that technology or interaction with that technology, they applied a lot of heuristics that they learned from tablets, phones, and smartphones, and the computers. So we would talk about mitigation strategy for the security, and they would say, well, on my phone I'm doing this, or I've heard a story from my friends using the computer, and that happened. So they apply a lot from other type of, maybe kind of, if you can distinguish between low and high tech. So if they're not familiar with high tech, they still have a vision that they learned from the low tech. And that was also very interesting, and it maps directly, like a linear correlation between their experience with low tech, and they just projected towards the high tech. So we found that privacy and security is a big concern among many, and why it may be interesting for industry to partner on that and to kind of engage and try to solve the thing together, are just 2 or 3 points that, 2 or 3 main insights that we brought out of these interviews. First is that people say if they have privacy and security issues, it's not that they just try to solve it, so that they buy antivirus or they try to figure out their settings, so they're just trying to do something to protect themselves while using the technology. Their main strategy is avoidance. So if they don't know how to do it, if they're afraid that it can violate something, their rights, their privacy, their safety, they say, oh, I just don't mess up with that. I just don't want to use it. I don't go to online banking. Just ask how many of your older parents have online banking account. That would be really representative of their privacy and security level of concerns. So they just avoid it all at all. So that means that those people are not even on your market. And that's a big loss, and that's why privacy and security being a secondary problem eventually make a big impact, I guess. That was one thing. Second thing is, a lot of the technology that we discussed today, and not only, are really great, and all of them involve a great level of surveillance. Let's just put a camera there, let's just put this sensor there, maybe not a camera, so there is not an image, but still there is a sensor there, 24 hours a day, constant. The more data they are, the more accurate is the algorithm. I don't understand how does that work. But on the other side, that's a lot of surveillance. And aging per se involves the loss of independence and loss of control. And that what bothers people, because they get used to be independent and they get used to be parent that is like looking on their children and giving them advice, and now they're switching their roles, and that's very painful from the psychological point of view. And so being surveilled every day is hard, and it's hard to accept. And people with very difficult health condition are ready to trade it in, so they're ready for this exchange of privacy and security for the benefits that these devices bring. And if they perceive the really high level of benefit that they're going to get from it, then they're ready to give up privacy and security. Most of the folks we talked to didn't feel that way. They always say, oh yeah, I totally see how someone would definitely benefit from it, but it's not for me yet. I'm not there yet. Like, I'm still okay. I still can handle it with the tools I have, like paper and pencil and chair and like some other devices that really meant to be, to solve the problems that they have. Or, reminders that will remind you about medications. I've heard such hilarious stories about how people deal with it. They just don't close their cabinet doors, and if it's open, it means they have to take the pill. If it's closed, they don't have to take the pill, and it perfectly works for them. So a lot of folks are just not at these conditions to give up privacy and security, and therefore it's important to address. And also, we don't have to think of, sometimes maybe, like this concept of personas, and then older adults as this cartoon character with the cane and the white beard, and it's just this concept of older adult and average, it just doesn't exist. They're not like that. There is no average adult. Some of them are much more busy than we are, and they do karate, and they do a lot of different activities. And that was very eye-opening to talk to one of the homosexual male that was very concerned about location, because he go very frequently to some meetings of the homosexual people, and he thinks that it can affect his reputation or image, or like put some stigma on him. So there were a lot of things that maybe not every developer would think of just out of his head. And that's why I invite you to partner with us and to explore this space more and try to address privacy and security concerns as much as we can and incorporate it in every product, not just to comply with the regulation, but to really meet the preferences of these people and make best out of their experience. So we did the interviews. We are still analyzing that. We have a lot of interesting insights, and I invite you to read some of the quotes from the interviews that we conducted. And we are planning the second round, which would be going to actually touch a specific technology, a specific interface, and try to play with that and do a user test and see how privacy and security issues are addressed with this technology, like how this technology addresses their privacy and security, see what is lacking, what is missing, and try to together come up and co-design together with the seniors the solution for it. So whether it's an interface, whether it's a framework that would really work and make the product the best. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, I'm a PhD student in the end of the PhD at Italian University, and I came here to work with Alice on her project that she was describing now. But my topic, let's say my research, focuses more about information design in the caregiving space and human-computer interaction. So listening to Lori and Mick was really interesting, and it's really about my research, about the triad of care, caregiver, professional caregiver, family caregiver, and the older adult. And I'm looking into information exchange among those, and I'm looking into granularity, amount of information that family members want to know, that professionals want to disclose, or older adults want to disclose themselves. And I'm looking what could bring peace of mind for all of those involved in this care process. And so I did. So far, I have findings on the professional and family caregiver sites, and it really confirms what Mick was saying about quality of care rather than quantified care. That family members don't want to know exactly how amount of time older adults spend doing specific activities, but they want to know overall state, and that's not easy when technology is in place, because that means translation from technology to the language of family members in a way that doesn't create even more stress before introducing technology in this scenario. And yeah, now I'm looking into preferences of older adults about this information exchange, and hopefully we'll come up with guidelines and let's say recommendations for technology producers on optimal, let's say, amount of information and optimal way of tracking older adults in this care context.
Thank you. So, while you guys all think about these fabulous questions, right? Don't leave, because I have a couple of people I need to introduce you to afterwards.
I've been in the elder care business for 20 years, and I've heard everybody here touch upon what, to my mind, are the two major issues, but haven't really addressed some of the solutions. One is the question of affordability, and with, for example, a company like Honor, my experience is that people begin to, as they need more and more services at home, and it gets more and more expensive, they no longer can afford it. And that's the point at which the kids, if they can, or somebody in the network, if they can, begins to look at other alternatives. In my case, I own an assisted living community, and you have no idea how many people we see who are coming from the home, taking care of mom or dad or the friend at home, coming to look at assisted living because it winds up in the long run actually being cheaper at the point at which they're looking. So one question, and it could be of any of you, is what proactive steps are you taking to try and deal with that issue? And the other issue is the issue of the coming caregiver shortage. I know that we're very, very conscious of that. And so the issue in some ways goes to robotics, but to what extent are the recipients going to be willing to deal with and accept robotics, and to what extent can that actually penetrate the marketplace? So those are my observations, but they're also questions of all of the members of the panel.
So to quickly address, and these of course are not perfect answers, but they're sort of ideas. Just like, I guess in the past, if someone required 24/7 care, they might have to have a qualified nurse, so an RN take care of the person, it's called 24/7. An RN is much more expensive than a CNA caregiver, so difference in training. Much like nowadays, you could supplement home health with home care. So having a qualified medical professional do, say, 18 hours of care or 8 hours of care, you'd have a non-medical home care professional do the rest. I could see in the future where someone might require a lot more home care, but then, like you said, it gets more expensive as the diagnosis progresses and people deteriorate. Imagine, let's say we worked with a device company, and so for the nighttime hours that someone might just require someone to monitor, you may not need a human to do that, a costly human to do that. Maybe you augment with a device that, say, cares for the person X number of hours per day, decreasing the overall home care cost. So that's one idea. The question about dwindling supply of caregivers. So one of the biggest things I mentioned is that caregivers generally are not respected. They tend to have low wage. They're kind of called paraprofessionals because they generally do work that a lot of us don't want to do, but if you sort of talk with them, it's very hard work. If you ever tried to volunteer for seniors, it's actually really hard stuff to do. And so one of the things we're trying to do is actually give a career ladder. So give performance management, give, besides just tenure, but if someone's really great at a particular skill, you give them more pay, and so you create a sort of a career projection around that. So folks who are basically competing with, working in McDonald's versus working in home care, you attract more talent into the home care business if you can give them a ladder up. And so that's one way to address the shortage. And I guess augmentation with devices is another.
So thank you for that nice lead-in. So let me talk a little bit about the augmentation with the devices. There has been a lot of technology innovations, and it's not just robotics, and robotics are fabulous, but there's been a lot of technology innovations in sensor technology. So you have sensors now in the home that can do 3D down to 10 centimeters. Okay, so that is high precision. They can monitor not only activity, but they can also monitor environmental factors. So if you have someone who's got too high a temperature in the home, too much humidity, that can cause some behavioral differences. So with the collection of this information with the sensors and the artificial intelligence and all the big data analytics, you can actually see patterns of behavior and you can take proactive action. And this data could go to both a family caregiver or it could go to a professional caregiver so that when they, if you can cut down the hours, the nighttime scenario is a brilliant scenario, but wouldn't it be better if your care pro walked in and knew exactly what had happened that night, down to by the minute, but only what mattered? Okay, so there is a whole lot of affordable technology out there. I mean, I've seen many technology curves. I'd say that is one thing that gives me hope for this affordability and this caregiver shortage, is that it can step in and do some of that. But you've also got to think about monitoring outside the home. So it's following the normal patterns of behavior. But I think there's hope we can talk more about later.
And I'm going to make one more comment, and that is that for any of you in this group, we have hosted folks who wanted to test their technology, and we are open to that.
Thank you.
We have a question from the esteemed Ms. Fisher.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. And I've learned a lot today, but I'm also very irked because there is not anybody my age is up there. And some of us, most of us are still with it. And even those who are not with it have a lot to contribute. So I hope on the next meeting, I'll learn as much in the next meeting, but I will have my contemporaries up there. You cannot get rid of us. We're here, we're vocal. And if we don't do that, we're going to be vocal in other ways which will embarrass you.
Our photographers. Sorry, somebody back here.
I have a question for Sandy. I've always wished that anybody looking for a caregiver could look at a map and see, a schedule within a half-mile radius of where they are, like who's available to give care at that time. It would just be a lot easier because it seems really challenging for those people who need like a couple hours of care here or there. It's like a much higher rate and really hard to find people who are willing to work. And then I also feel bad for caregivers who have to drive across town and deal with traffic just to do a 2-hour shift somewhere. And that seems like a space where your company's technology could really be handy. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's a really challenging question, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There's two sides to that question. One is, obviously, there are people who need a couple hours care a day, but it's really hard for someone, let's say, who needs 2 hours of care, lives in Palo Alto, to expect a caregiver who probably lives in, like, East Oakland, to drive, pay a bridge toll, go all the way to Palo Alto for 2 hours when they could just work an 8-hour shift in downtown Oakland and get the same amount of pay or more. The key to that is actually density and more caregivers. And so, for example, if we could say to that caregiver, oh, do this 2-hour shift here in Palo Alto, but we've also packed your schedule, so there's a 6-hour shift ahead of that in Palo Alto, there's another 1-hour shift after that, and there's a 4-hour shift in call it Redwood City beyond that. So now you have a 10-hour day ready to go, 8-hour day ready to go. That's much more compelling to a care pro. The reality of the situation is that, in particular in the Bay Area, geography plays a big role. Like bridge tolls, if you're making $14 an hour, $15 an hour, a $7 toll is enormous. That's so much work you have to do to pay that off. And so the economics of it are actually really challenging. It is a goal for us. We've actually experimented with 2-hour, 1-hour shifts. It's very hard. And I think it only happens when you get to a particular scale. We're getting pretty close where that's something that's pretty feasible. Some of the screenshots I showed what we call bundled offers, where we're just giving people a choice of clients, not just shifts. And so if you think you have a relationship with a particular client, you can charge one of these packages of care. So it's a lot about performance management and about schedule management, but a lot of that comes with scale, density, and like more people and things in general. So yes, it's definitely a problem that we definitely are looking at. Much harder to solve right now, but on the horizon.
I'll address that too, and it kind of loops back to the affordability question that you raised. At the apartment building that we own and operate in San Mateo, we've noticed this really lovely communitarian thing happening, which is without our interfering, and in fact we're just the landlord, the residents are coordinating with one another. They're sharing home care hours, they're sharing duties like driving each other to the doctor, getting groceries for each other. They're helping out in that way that we would hope our society is all about. And that's one of the reasons why we're so committed to that model, where you create density in a naturally occurring way. And we'd love to see more of that happen, because while for some people living in their family home is the right decision for them, there are trade-offs in terms of your ability to connect with the world. And when you're in a building, and in our case it's 135 units, 200 people, magical things happen. And all you have to do is set it free. So I really encourage, if you haven't had an opportunity to see an environment like that, go ahead and check it out, because great things are happening.
Hi, thank you. That was really great. I'm wondering if each of you could comment on if you see differences, if you look across the U.S., it's always a bit of a challenge to do research here in the Bay Area because it is a bit of a bubble and a lot of people are more tech savvy than the average, and you don't want to build something for, you know, a retired engineer from, you know, Intel or Oracle who knows all this stuff, right? So I wonder if you all could comment on kind of if you do see differences between seniors, say, in a tech-savvy place like here, or maybe other major metros, and seniors in some other communities.
Since I've got the mic, I'll just answer, and really just from the perspective of, I think the point that's already been made, older adults are never going to be one persona. So we operate 4 buildings in Northern California, and every single one is different, and actually every person is different. So I'll let other people address sort of the cross-country elements of it, but we see that how we program and how we ask questions has to be different every single time.
That's a very great comment about the tech savviness of the people in the Bay Area. And indeed, people that we interviewed, a lot of them were, I've been in IBM since the beginning, I've been in Intel since the beginning. That was very interesting, but I cannot say that all of them are like that. So I cannot answer your question about the cross country, because I already acknowledged that we didn't do it on the other coast or anywhere in Midwest. But we see an interesting, so we map the technical skills of people and the frequency with which they use low-tech devices. Well, we consider them low-tech because they're less smart than most of the smart devices that are presented here. And we saw just a gap. So there was everywhere between every day and never, so it was like once a week, every month, blah, blah. We saw that all our observations were along the 2 extremes. So it was either never or every day, and then like few scattered point here and there, maybe once a week, maybe. So it means that there is really a big divide between those who use it and those who don't. And it seems like they probably don't even see them. Like, it's not a learning curve. It seems like it's a learning jump. Like, it's just a gap that you have to overcome overnight. And that's probably why, that's probably explains why people of a certain age feel helpless and like feel fearless of trying that, because they see someone who is that good of their age but so much better with the technology than they are, that they apply this kind of names and labels to themselves. I'm just not good with the technology. I'm just, this smart technology is smarter than I. So this happens a lot. So it's not even the geography, I guess it's, at least in our sample, that was across the ages, across the genders.
Very quickly, one interesting thing we have seen across geography, I do agree with the other panelists that for the most part people are very similar. People's trust sources are different by geography. For example, in Texas, a lot more faith-based. In the Bay Area, maybe it's more kids or the internet. In Albuquerque, it's more the community. So it can just vary depending on where you are sort of rooted and sort of who do you trust, who do you go for advice or knowledge. That tends to be an interesting geographic divide.
I was just going to make a quick comment. I don't have an answer for you yet, but I love the question because we're just kicking off that huge research study with the state of Texas, and I think it'd be very interesting to see. We also have another research study with Georgia, a major university in Georgia, and we're working on a bunch of things in Kentucky and Tennessee as well. So thank you very much for that thought, because I'm going to keep that in mind and implant it to see if we can get some data around it.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment too. In the beginning of my research, I was very curious how older adults are defined in academia, in research studies. And I did a literature review on that, just to understand what is the concept of being older adults in research on usability of technologies. And I realized that many times older adults are defined by age, like 65 plus, but it doesn't mean that they have all the same abilities. So I came up with the idea that older adults should be defined by their abilities, let's say, by what they can do, but not by age, especially now, because now people are maybe very tech savvy and maybe very active, even if they are in an older adults age group. Just a comment.
So I'm not on the panel, but I like to take the approach that would stimulate their intellectual and emotional passions, and that leads into technology.
Hi, my name is Paula Wolfson, and I see Eric a lot because I work here too. I'm the manager of social work, and I run, actually this summer I ran about 8 family caregiver support groups per month. Okay, think about that, 8. One on Stanford campus with retired spouses of Stanford staff. So it's wonderful to be here. I've been going to these aging tech conferences now for about half a year, and I'm always learning things. I want to talk to Sandy. Hi, I met Seth when you guys first started, and we started, you guys came to our groups and we made referrals, and I've heard really, really good comments about your CarePros. I also have great comments about our other partners over in the corner here. How are you guys over there? Home instead. So I would like to know, how do you train your CarePros to do their actual work? Are you training them with people, or, because I hear a lot of people do training online?
We do people. So the vetting process in the beginning has to be done with the person, because obviously you want to interview someone for their qualities. We do a bunch of training actually in person. So the onboarding process requires many hours of in-person training, so things like lifting and transferring, general, personality, like bedside manner care. We've actually experimented with online courses. There are some things that can speed up the process that maybe don't require as much in person. We're still trying to find the balance. But the thing is, again, much like seniors can't be bucketed into one personas, neither can CarePros. And so CarePros, depending on who their clients are, level of care, level of experience, might require more tailored, personalized training for a particular client. So let's say a client needs, XYZ requirements. We'll actually walk a particular CarePro who's serving that client through those particular characteristics. It takes a lot of time, but we found that the more upfront investment you put in the CarePro, the better care you get. And for the most part, everybody wants a consistent caregiver, right? You don't want 9 people going through your home every day. But we do emphasize that you want a team of CarePros to serve a client, because people get sick, their kids get sick. And so we try to provide the same type of training for a particular client for that team of CarePros.
Additional questions?
So kind of along those same lines, but for, say, the unpaid family caregiver person, research shows that there's that gap from a training standpoint, whether it's like the non-medical stuff or some of those nursing level skills. Is there anyone, I don't know, from research or what the apartments can speak to, is there any work in that space, or just, any comments there, since, we're talking about pay, but the reality is a significant amount of people are caring for their loved ones, on a part-time basis, or maybe even full-time, and they're not getting paid. So I haven't really heard a lot about the non-paid side of the market.
Yeah, not only is it a topic that's worthy of a lot more attention, but it's worthy of our concern. Because I think that there's a heavy degree of burnout for the family care partners. And for some of them, especially those that are caring for someone with a disability or living with dementia, they're experiencing a stigma of their own. And it's something that we've just launched a new service line around to really understand what that stigma is all about and to see whether we can create some breakthroughs. So this fall we're going to be announcing creating a number of arts-oriented events centered in San Francisco but in the greater Bay Area to invite those families, especially the care partners, to come and experience a creative practice or to engage in the arts and to feel free from that stigma, that they belong and that they're included in our society. So that's something that we care a lot about, and we honestly don't understand it well enough, which is why we've just begun studying it. There's a couple of people in this room who are actually part of a new research institute that we're setting up to study this exact question.
Just a quick comment. The other thing is that no one talks about caregiving on Facebook. It's not like I post on Facebook, my mom got home care today. And so for most unpaid family caregivers, they feel very alone. They feel like they have this burden. They feel like they don't have a community around that, even though almost everybody that you talk to in private has a personal story around it. And so part of the sort of panels like this is just opening up the dialogue to open people up to be more vocal about it. There aren't a lot of communities around this. This is something that I think a lot of people are trying to create, definitely on our roadmap as well, just to be like, okay, you are not alone. Here are the things that you deal with every day. There are 900 million other people that deal with that same issue. Here are the things that you can do to support that. Here are things you can do to help with respite care. So I think just opening up the dialogue is actually a really big step in the right direction, because for most people, they just don't even know where to go because there are no resources.
So there are Facebook groups that caregivers are really actively a part of, as well as Yahoo groups and all kinds of Google Hangouts and stuff. But I think two organizations that do a lot of training for family caregivers is the Family Caregiver Alliance and the Alzheimer's Association, which are both nonprofit, and I just want to recommend your work.
Yep, awesome. Like, we just need to hear more about those.
Hello. On the privacy and the security side of things, so I hear the point that people do prefer to not be spied on, and all things even equal. If we were to do a research experiment today and raise our hands, the sample size of 50 plus, we would see a probably statistically significant number of people that would say, like, yeah, I would rather not have someone in a dark room somewhere spying on my data, you know. If you look at, I do believe that when the product is good enough, people don't care as much about the privacy, right? People tell Google their deepest, darkest things that they wouldn't even tell to their mother or their son, right? People don't lie to Google because the things that you query in Google is the answers that you get back. You know, people lie to their family members, people lie to polls, people lie to themselves, but people do not lie to Google when they type something on the query box. Otherwise, the answer doesn't mean anything. So the question to you is there any research around, to me it seems like people care about privacy as long as the product is not that great. When you reach a level of the product being so awesome like Google, like I'm not going to stop using Google because they know my data, or I'm not going to stop to use my iPhone because they track me all the time. It's just too essential. Is there any data around that line when people say, I don't care about the privacy because the product is just too good,
Yeah, I hear your point, and I don't think that it's that much about the product is that good, but it's about the problem is that bad. I guess that, I mentioned that before, that there is research, a big body of literature showing that their health status is really correlated with this willingness to trade the privacy and security for the benefits that the product or any other solution provides for that problem. That's first of all. But if you care about the product, then it was interesting to see how people think about brands. So older adults also are aware of brands, and they mention them, and there is a lot of kind of trust associated with the brand. So we have a couple of, I don't remember whether we put it on the poster, but I remember a couple of quotes where people say, I trust Apple because I know that it's going to keep my data secure. So with Apple, I use some services for, let's say, for payment, but I wouldn't do it on Windows. I've heard so many bad things about Windows. So I don't know where these beliefs come from. I don't know whether they are accurate. At least I don't want to claim whether they are accurate or not. But people think about products from that perspective as well. And that again supports my previous comment that it's important to incorporate it because it doesn't maybe on the top of your head directly drives your sales or the development of the product, but it's really a powerful factor that eventually defines the acceptance of that.
So I'm a sensor guy, and we had a company that tracks sleep. And you can imagine for a lot of folks, the thought of somebody tracking your sleep is a big deal, what's going on in the bed. So the whole idea of privacy and to a certain degree security came up, but rarely did it matter when there's a benefit. To your question, I think the challenge that we're all facing here is we're talking about us, the caregivers, and the benefit to us, caregivers. versus the lady over there who was talking about as we age. And I'm 66, so I'm moving into that category. But I have an 88-year-old mother that we're taking care of. And so when we're trying to balance all of that, it's a benefit to her. So we have to sell her on the benefit of the technology. And it's not always an easy sell. We had to get her from a push-button phone to an iPhone. And that was a pretty big hurdle. So the challenge is communicating these benefits that, whether it's Honor or the platform with the camera, is how it benefits those folks, not us folks. Because we know the benefit. I think most of us have seen the benefit. I don't want to see my mom run around with underwear, but we understand the benefit.
One other thing that we might have to grapple with is maybe we shouldn't have this ideal of perfection, that we prevent every fall, that we observe every fridge left open, that that one of the things that we've learned in working with older adults for quite a long time and respecting their autonomy and individuality is that they really want us to allow them to live their lives. And this is just the intense question of our moment, is what is it to be a human being when it's technically possible to watch everything? And I would leave it to older adults to address it, far be it from me, but it's something that we hear and are contemplating a lot.
Just to comment on that, so we also saw that in our interviews, and it's not only to allow children live their lives, but it's also like a fear to make them worry for nothing. So if they know every single moment something happened, I guess Lisa has more to say about that because she interviewed families and the caregivers on that, and what amount of information would be just enough to not raise the level of anxiety too high, while still provide the important information. That's the whole idea behind the information design in that space. So that's really a good question. And also to comment on what you said before, I totally agree that it's the complexity of the issue. Part of the complexity of the issue is that people perform multiple roles. So you're a child and you're a caregiver at the same time. Or you're a caregiver, but you're also a friend, because maybe it's an alone older adult and they only, bedbound, and one of the few humans that they see every day is that caregiver. So there is a more than just a caregiver role on her or on him. And so this mixture of roles really creates the complexity of how much do I share, what do I want them to know, how do I care about their feelings, how they care about my feelings and each other's lives.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that, and from my studies with professional family caregivers, when we come to them and say, hey, this is the list of information that you can know, and like, would you like to know this amount of information, this granularity? Usually they say, no, I just want to know like if she or he is doing fine and what is the trend, like if things are going worse, so I should be ready for that, or overall like summary of general, like for example, sleep patterns. But we didn't really find anyone who really wants to know every minute, like for example the wearables that we wear sometimes, the Fitbits, or they show us how many hours we slept, what was the deep sleep, and no, but family caregivers don't really want to know that, and professional caregivers also don't think it makes sense. Yes.
All right, thank you. We're going to kick off with the next phase, which is really for you guys to finish drinking the wine. I want to thank our panel for showing up and I think Steve Aber left. I don't see him. Steve left. So there's a continuing conversation on seniorroundtable.com. It's also a LinkedIn group, and you're free to join, free to participate in the conversation. He asked me to invite you guys all to take a look at it. It's Senior Roundtable in LinkedIn, and it's seniorroundtable.com.